The night Elias buried his mother, it rained without mercy. He stood at the edge of a muddy grave in a borrowed suit, holding an umbrella that the wind had already broken twice. And for the first time in 37 years, he understood what it meant to be completely alone. No wife, she had left 2 winters before. No children. His brother, somewhere in a city he never visited, had sent a card, but not himself. The handful of neighbors who came paid their respects quickly, mumbled something warm, and hurried back to their warm houses. And then there was just Elias, the rain, and a mound of dark earth. He drove home along a road he could barely see and sat in a kitchen that smelled of his mother's cooking, even though nothing had been cooked there in months. The casserole dishes were still stacked, the way she had left them. Her reading glasses sat folded on the windowsill, waiting for eyes that would never need them again. Elias put the kettle on, not because he wanted tea, but because the sound of boiling water was the only noise he could stand. He had believed in God once. Quietly, the way a man believes in the foundation beneath a house, never thinking about it, trusting it is there. But sitting in that empty kitchen, he felt the foundation shift. If you are there, he thought, not quite a prayer, not quite an accusation, then why does it feel like nothing is? The stripping, the months that followed, were a slow, quiet demolition. His small carpentry business, which he had run for 12 years, lost its biggest contract in January. By March, the workshop lease was due and the numbers did not add up. He let the last of his 2 employees go on a Friday afternoon and watched the man nod and walk away without looking back. And something in that small departure felt like the last nail being drawn out of a wall. In April, he sold his truck. In May, he moved into a single room above a laundromat, carrying his tools in 3 boxes and his life in 2 bags. Friends, the ones who had felt like permanent fixtures, drifted the way furniture drifts out of a house. During a slow move, one piece at a time, until one day you look around and the rooms are bare. The calls grew shorter, the invitations dried up. He told himself he understood. People had their own lives to carry. He did not begrudge them. But understanding a thing and not feeling the wound of it are 2 very different countries. There is a kind of silence that is not peaceful. It is the silence of a room after everyone has left it. That was the silence Elias now lived inside. He began reading at night because he could not sleep. He picked up his mother's Bible not from faith, but from a kind of homesickness, and found her handwriting in the margins. Small notes beside certain verses. A question mark next to one passage. A tiny exclamation point beside another. Her presence was still alive in those ink-thin marks, and he read the whole book slowly, following her annotations the way you follow a trail of breadcrumbs through a dark wood. The turning, it was a Tuesday in October, unremarkable in every outward way, when Elias knelt on the worn linoleum of his small room and said, out loud, the most honest prayer of his life. It was not eloquent. It was not composed. It was 6 words. The kind of words a drowning man gasps, not the kind a choir boy sings. I have nothing. I need you. He did not see a light. The room did not tremble. No angel arrived with good news tucked under its wing. But something changed as real and as difficult to describe as the moment of fever breaks. A heaviness he had carried so long he had stopped noticing it simply was no longer there. In its place was something he could only call present, steady, unhurried, vast. The way a fire in a hearth fills a room not with noise but with warmth. He wept deeply without shame for a long time. In the weeks that followed, Elias began to notice things he had been too busy to see when life had been full. He noticed that the old man on the second floor knocked his pipes every morning at 6:15, and that the sound was oddly comforting. He noticed that the woman who ran the laundromat below always left a light on for the late arrivals, and that this small mercy meant more than it had any right to. He noticed that the world, stripped of the noise of his former ambitions, was full of quiet gifts he had never once stopped to unwrap. What the ruins reveal, a man from the local church found Elias one Saturday at the farmer's market, where Elias had set up a small table to sell handmade wooden spoons and cutting boards. Not a business, just something to do with his hands. The man admired the craftsmanship. They talked for an hour. Within a month, Elias was repairing the church's rotting window frames for a modest wage, and within a year, he had more work than he could manage alone. He hired one person, then two. But that is not the real story. The real story is what happened inside him during the stripping. Because the man who came out of those 2 years was not the man who had entered them. The man who entered had believed, in the way most men quietly believe, that his worth was measured by what he produced, what he owned, who depended on him. The man who came out knew in his bones, not just his mind, that he had been loved before any of that, and that he would be loved after all of it was gone. He kept his mother's Bible. He still reads it at night. Her handwriting is still in the margins. But now, here and there, written carefully in blue ink beside hers, there are his own small notes. A question answered. A word underlined. A tiny cross beside a verse about how the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. When everything was taken, nothing false was left. And in the nothing that remained, he finally found what had always been there. On the grace hidden inside loss. Elias does not tell this story often. But when he does, when some younger man sits across from him with that particular look of someone watching the walls come down, he says the same thing every time. He says, "I know it feels like ending. It is not ending." The God who walked with Job in the ash heap, with David in the caves, with Joseph in the prison, he is walking with you right now in this. And he does not walk with people he plans to abandon. He walks with people he is preparing for something they cannot yet see. He says it quietly, the way a man speaks when he knows something not from a book, but from having lived it. And then he makes a cup of tea, always tea, and they sit together in the kind of silence that is not empty at all. He who loses everything and still has God has lost nothing that will not be returned to him in a form far better than he imagined.